So the problem is how do we, I mean, obviously their cultures were more hidden about it, but we have let the cat out of the bag. How do we stuff that baby
How do we go back?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know.
I think that even...
I mean, the fact that we're not even protecting our children,
Yeah.
that is truly heinous.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think the good news is history repeats itself. So I don't know if going back, I mean, it's possible, but I think it would take an entire generation seeing how inauthentic a lot of this is. And I say that because obviously from my worldview and like our shared worldview, you know, we would expect and hope that most other believers would see in the same way. But I think even non-believers could and should see how inauthentic these postings are and what it's actually saying and how hypocritical it is to the people, like the same people, especially in the radical feminist movement, that the really like progressive radical type feminist movement that's been going on, is supposedly anti-objectifying women, yet the same people who are not wanting to be seen as an object are promoting these same pornographic type acts, but they don't see it as porn. And so I think it's a mindset shift, a cultural shift. I don't see it being something that happens overnight or anytime soon necessarily, but I do think that things could potentially escalate to where it takes a storm of people saying enough is enough and making changes, you know?
Right.
I mean, bell bottoms are coming back into style.
I know.
Those are from the 70s, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so since you were 70s, babe,
Ask
so
my
maybe...
sister. She still has a hang-up. I stole her
I hope we
jeans.
don't go back to secrecy in magazines also, though.
Right.
Because think about it, if it's off social, what's gonna...
Yeah.
I don't know.
You said something to me about how the world sees us, and you were referring to... I think it was when you were in Turkey and how people saw us over there.
Oh, yes. Hollywood has a lot to do with that. And Americanized media.
And Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah, so when I was overseas last year, it was funny because a lot of people in these foreign countries, like Turkey, they kind of generalize Americans based upon the movies that they've watched, TV shows, because they love American media, you know, and we're the land of entertainment business. So what we produce, they see, just like, you know, Americans and what we see on the news and generalize of other cultures and people. So they assume that Christians are all promiscuous, which makes sense. Like, I don't blame them for having these thoughts, just assuming, oh, they probably have succumbed to whoredom.
Because
because
we have Instagram on our feeds, is that it? Or
it's not so much, well, maybe Instagram, but it's more so they love American media, movies, TV shows.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So
and think about it
thinking,
too, even in movies they'll depict, because they assume most people who come from America too are Christian, but Turks do. But you know, assume they have Christian faith, but then you see the movies and TV shows where you even might have supposedly people depicted as having faith or going to church, yet you have in these same shows and movies the completely promiscuous, full front nudity type lifestyle combined. And so
the message is mixed.
Yeah. And even though it's really a depiction of Hollywood and not all of America, because they're the hot spot and the hub for entertainment, movies, film, everything in the industry, or a large portion of it, I think. And because it is such a, like, it's like a complete nationwide, actually, like a worldwide phenomenon, I would say, because other cultures are, seeing what we produce and then just dubbing it for Americans.
But
So.
I think what's interesting that's going on in Hollywood now, there's been a real pulling of the plug. I mean, the cables, we all started pulling cables, and now we're considering our streaming apps and who we're going to keep and who we're going to throw away.
Yeah.
So it's become a very interesting place, and they are, financially hurting right now. The people
Hollywood?
oh yes,
I didn't know
they
that.
are financially hurting, and they are feeling the pinch of the American dollar, saying no. Now a lot of that might be people staying home, but I don't think it's. If you read, my favorite part on news scrolling is to read the comments. And you hear that, and there are people out there. There's so many people out there just sick of Hollywood, sick of the content, sick of not having just good movies, that tell good stories. But I mean, I know personally, I don't want to be preached at anymore like that. I mean, they get mad at us Christian people for preaching, and yet they're preaching themselves. So
they're regurgitating the same message in its own ways over and over.
I know they're having difficulties, and I think a lot of it is the way they have portrayed people, and that we have, I guess being normal is boring, and so they have to do something differently. I don't know, but I know we're speaking is when you look at the scope of America, it is not Hollywood. And so I think people are speaking to them very deeply. What's it going to take? I mean, do you see that maybe it will take I'm unplugging from this, I'm unplugging from that, I'm pulling.
Like jumping the ship.
I'm jumping the ship.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I do try to keep an eye on my content and what, I watch, obviously. But there are still things that will pop up in your, or if you, this is the hardest part. We've all learned, I was even talking to a media person today, we used to, I remember the first time I Googled angels for the girls. I went,
Victoria's Secret angels.
Oh, no, it was beyond that. It was
worse.
beyond that. I went, okay, wrong Google. I learned that you have to Google so specifically that it's about and they were
don't
talking.
Go to images first.
And I mean, no, and you don't go to, I never do that. But my Googling is now so specific. I veer from certain words, but the words are always changing, and so I'll say something to my girls, and they'll say, "Mom, you can't say that." I'm like, "What?" And they'll talk to me, and I'll look up in the urban,
like the new slang, Urban Dictionary,
the Urban Dictionary, and I'll read it aloud.
Webster
I'll say, "My goodness,
longer.
I had no idea. The 1828 is all out." And I am stunned. I'm just stunned that how even the appropriation of words is it's slang has come into a different kind of. I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember I've raised like 3 generations of children, and they're half generations. I remember with my middle ones, we don't say the word socks. We don't say the word socks in our house. I say the word socks.
Yeah.
What are some other things? We don't say the word crap. We don't talk. We never say the word balls. No, it's testicles.
Even if frostbite is involved.
Even if frostbite, and that's a different story.
Topic.
But
monarchy.
Yes. What can? Yes. But I was just wondering, our whole world, even my language, could become lazy in the way I speak of something. So, I mean, I have to be careful. I have to be really careful. But I don't know if we can put the cat back in the bag without truly pulling some plugs, truly putting. We have to be convicted of it first.
That's like exactly what I was gonna say, because it starts with people's conviction of things, and also in what people view as right and wrong, which is the crux of it all.
But it's absolute truth. Like, what is right? What is wrong? What's wrong with this? Why are you being such a prude? Why can't I do it? And honestly, you can do whatever you want. I mean, that's the truth. that people have freedoms to do whatever they want. I think the point is to raise the standard for morality and say, this is not, set the standard for kids and say, this is not healthy for you. There's ramifications in so many ways. The idea that, teen pregnancy has gone down so low in age is shocking. But that all this plays in, it plays together.
Well, I think conviction but I think what does give me a glimmer of hope is seeing some of the people who've been convicted of previous sexual type assault, like, who was it? Mayor Cuomo? Was that it? Who is...
Oh, yeah.
No? Yeah?
I forgot about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thrown off. Basically, these big wig people who were thrown off their throne by people digging up the actual dirt on them and seeing these things that are really corrupt in the system. So I hope that paralleling that, people will begin to realize how we're actually being viewed and we're actually doing to ourselves and the damage, be it social media, any outlet, and coming to more of a universal truth, right?
Yes.
But I don't know. It really does, I think, deal more so with one's own conviction. Obviously, we have the big hubs who allow us to promote the content, like Instagram, Pornhub, and just even the influx of television and movies. So I think it would have to be an entire cultural shift and people with the same conviction but actually doing something about it. But I think it starts really small too. I don't think that it has necessarily be just some poof, like, big movement.
Right.
But for men and women, I think literally starting by controlling what you're looking at online, right? Because you can't control necessarily when you're changing channels on the TV or doom scrolling through Netflix or a scene, what immediately pops up, but you can choose to move past it or to stop watching it or to unfollow certain pages, to unfilter, to not zoom in and out on your phone.
To pay attention to
Yes, to actually what you're internalizing too, and to cough, do an Instagram spring cleaning to really see who you're looking at and what pages you're following. And I just think it's interesting. My biggest question for people, men and women, is like, what does your search engine say about you? What does it say about your fetishes, your habits, things of that nature? I don't know. What do you think, though?
Well,
do you think we have any hope for humanity?
Well, I'm going to throw in a little pitch from my book, because I do mention that in my book. And this is where I mention it, is we, back in the day, it was my journals or papers that I had that I needed to be concerned about that my children might find. And really, honestly, it was just really jerky me thinking I was just wonderful and my mom was always wrong or my dad was always wrong. So there's that. But, you think about it. You think about the pictures that you have back in the day, if you're my age, the photographs that we were taken. But now, if you are actually doing, because I'm always, me, I'm always talking about a plan for when I exit here. And I finally called it something. I have now named it the Sia box. But the thing is, it's not contained in a box. It is on my computer. It is on my phone. It is on all my media. All this stuff that technology runs that people need to do the spring cleaning on. And they need to do a legacy cleaning on it because, yes, your kids can already see it. But let's say technology is not obviously not forever, but let's say technology goes on for who knows until something new happens. I mean, it is historical now. It acts as a history book. Whereas back in the day, only certain people got written up about, or you'd find a family photo. I don't know about you. I'm lucky if I have 3 really old family photos. But now it's on everything. So your generations, and we're not saying anything that hasn't been said. This is not new. Everybody's heard this.
Yeah.
But I do think this is a clarion call we've got to do something. And we need to get rid of that for generations to see. Do you want your great-grandchild looking at this? Do you want your grandchild looking at this?
As in images of you,
Yes.
or in that fashion.
Well, but even the stuff that you have on your computer.
Right.
Do you really want your children to uncover? Because this has happened in a different way. But do you want your children to see what? Hello. Welcome to
Neighbors
reality
of the farm.
podcasting. But do you want your children to find and be the ones who have to go through your laptop or accidentally scroll on what you're looking at? I just don't think it's the legacy you want to leave.
I think so too. And I think it's interesting to imagine if people could actually see, like, if your search engine and every image you've looked at, internet or no internet, could be visible, what would that say about you too?
Right.
But I think, one of the biggest questions, and I see this debated, and I've debated so many people on this question too, is what actually classifies pornography as pornography? Because some people use the argument that, well, it's just a woman feeling liberated and free. And I think that not all nudity and images are the same. So I'm curious what, as a 70s babe now in the 2023 generation, what do you think defines it as?
Yeah, and Abigail's going to answer this question for us. Grumpy old Abigail. I'm glad that... okay, so we can just move on to the next question. No, this goes way back to all the feminist books I read in the 70s. And then you counterculture that with reading the Bible, where there's that great book of, King Solomon wrote that we all ran to as children. Because what was it, though?
Your breasts are towers of milk.
Yes.
It's much more steamy than that. Is it dairy-free, though, for this generation?
It was a lot of fun reading that in the Bible. I do think there is the objectification. It's the eye of the camera. It is the way it is. I think it's the lack of intimacy. I think that is what determines pornography. But then again, I think about that on those romance books. They were building all sorts of intimacy. But the point is, in the end, this is the point behind pornography and marriage and everything else. If that's all you think a relationship is about, is sex, and your gratification, in the end, there's no one human person that can handle that and give that to you.
Right.
Again, you will never be satisfied. And there's no way one person can live up to that. You could do backflips until your 70s. And it's still not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And I do think it is the outright heart of a person. But again, it is a lack of clothing. It is the positioning of it. It's the camera. It's the suggestive nature of it. There's just a certain quality to it. But it is hard to define. But it is also very quantifiable in what genre it's put under.
Right.
I did not know about the Pornhub. But if it's in Pornhub, it's porn. That's what they're selling, right?
Yeah. Videos and photos, videos.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a minor, legal adult.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think that movies, TV shows, people see pornography, I think, as just still images, or only these big like Playboy Pornhub.
No, I will tell you about movies right now. I told the girls...
Even if it has a redeeming quality. Let me add that in, too.
Yeah, that was... that's tricky. That is really, really tricky. But I know I said to the girls a couple of nights ago, I said, let's just watch a movie. It was Kate and Leopold.
Oh, yeah.
But it does take the Lord's name in vain, so I don't like it. So I paused that part and skipped over it. But I said, let's watch a movie that I've seen 100 times and is a really good movie, just because I know what's in it. And I think that's where I'm going with movies now. I hear that from a lot of people. We're watching Gunsmoke, or we're watching, just an older movie just because we know what's in it. I showed you a Philadelphia
yes.
story with Kate
so
Hepburn
good.
and Katharine Hepburn.
That is a really
and
great movie to watch.
It is a really great, and there is some, sexual suggestiveness to it, but at the same time, I just want to go back where it's not, thrown in my face, and I have to see it. I don't have to see it. I remember, and I still haven't answered your question because I haven't really. I wish I had.
No, but you are answering my question.
This is why I love historicals. So when I watched that, I read the thing on Game of Thrones, and I went, booyah, this is going to be my thing.
Oh.
And and I don't know if I did it out of order. So all I know is the young lady stood up, and I thought, okay, cut. They're going to cut away. And because the deal is, sex has been around for a very long time. To hide the fact that there is sex is, stupid. But to show it is a different story. I don't want to see it. I really don't want to see it. And I know Hollywood or whatever does it for ratings, and people have no problem with it and blah, 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 blah. But I don't want to see it. And I think they discount us people who don't want to see it.
Minority.
That's I want to see the history of it. And so I thought, okay, she's going to cut away. And she drops the robe and the camera stays there. And I went, oh, end of story. And it really, really, I'm going to say the word, sucked. That I didn't get to watch this fascinating character thing that people talk about all the time, because the characters sound, there is, a lot of interesting characterizations that you hear about on there. And I don't get to watch that because there's so much of it shown.
And it makes you wonder, too, because what you're saying about the characters and so much of what Hollywood produces nowadays, because you get so attached to the characters, it begins to normalize the stuff to where, and I don't think people realize it all at once, but it's the things that once would make you kind of wince.
Yes.
Suddenly it's completely normal. Like the things we see, no one thinks twice about it.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to break some rules here about Bridgerton.
Oh my gosh!
I thought another time I was
freaking
so
Bridgerton
thrilled because I love the whole.
Worst.
Hello, Mike. Hello, Joe Rogan's Mike. But I was so excited because I loved the whole play, the interplay of a black young man and a white woman, and I loved all that.
The acting is so good.
And the acting is so good. The sets are so beautiful. Yeah. The creativity is so perfect. And then at one point I went, okay, if I could just get past the orgy scene, it'll be all right. And I was encouraged by some of my older kids. You just got to get at the end. And I'm like, okay, beautiful, beautiful people, but really, do I have to see the headboard banging against the wall anymore? And I finally just said no. And I was told, you need to watch the end of it. And I was like, no, I don't. I don't need to watch that. And there was a nice one, but it was still edgy. It was Sanditon. It was a unfinished Jane Austen movie. Book, excuse me. She didn't make movies. But even then that it pushed some of the edges, but it was very interesting. No, there was some scenes I went, okay, I'm going to have to get past that. I forget in the very beginning, but then it became a lot more, if I'm recalling correctly, and that's part of the problem, it was better. But that's the problem, is when they show everything. I don't need to see everything. I really don't. And I don't know if everybody needs to see. I mean, and I'm not saying, I don't know if everybody goes, oh, wow, I'm glad I saw that.
Right.
You know, but I mean, I'm serious.
That, like, changes your entire course of life because you saw exactly how to give a great orgasmic
It
experience.
was Bridgerton. I was like, come on, guys, Flagstone on your knees. There's nothing good about that.
Logically thinking.
And it's cold,
it's
England
irrational.
rain. I mean, let's just be logical here.
Anatomically logical.
It's just not.
Well, it paints, I think it paints unrealistic sexual expectations too.
Yes, like you're going to do something on
laser
Flagstone.
beams and shower sex. That wasn't that Nicholas Sparks.
I don't watch
movie.
Nicholas Sparks.
I don't either, except for this one.
Oh.
And I was sitting between my parents.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's right. You were a star. You had a starring role.
So I was a background artist. We were called extras back in the day, but to make it sound like
now you're a background artist.
You're a background artist.
So you actually got paid for this.
I got paid for 15 hours in a long jean jumpsuit. So I had high expectations because I'm not like a romance novel type person. I'd never read Nicholas Sparks. I had never seen The Notebook. Gasp. I was, I think, 17 at this time, 17 or 18. And the movie comes out. So I have these high expectations and I'm sitting between my parents in the theater. I was a senior in high school. And I remember covering my ears and saying, dear God, make it stop. Because there was this
I didn't see it.
Where they're having shower sex with this laser beam light show, and I'm thinking, how would you not actually slip and fall? Like, now they have slip and fall insurance on their set because it was it was an awkward scene to be watching with your parents, but also it makes what I realized.
Oh, that's really awkward.
Right. Well, it was so awkward. 17 and sitting between your parents.
No, that's just horrifying.
It was and that wasn't even the worst of worst sex scenes I've ever seen. I mean, it was more so very irrational and kind of stupid to me. It was very awkward, but it was more so how much more unrealistic can it get than this? Right. Now, years later, when I think back on it, but I think that even these shows like Bridgerton and just the utter absolute crap that is regurgitated from Hollywood gives the idea that everything is a fantasy. But I think that's the whole point of it. And that's how it's such a big moneymaker, is because it drives people into this fantasy world and getting hooked onto these shows and the characters to where we don't think twice about just the absolute garbage, including pornography that's on our screens. Like, if people are like full front nudity or even these grotesque sexual scenes, I think that would be considered pornography, and even what, Webster or Urban Dictionary would define as it. I know I keep saying, I sound like such a prude, and I'm not.
I know. That's what I keep thinking.
We're prudes. I'm like, wow.
Hashtag prudes, and we're proud of it.
I can hear my
proud
troll
prudes. We'll be proud prudes.
I can hear my troll stalkers, the people who spam my DMs only to shred me to pieces when I post an unpopular opinion.
But something happened with you when you started posting on Instagram against all the... all this is the guys you were having clicks on guys. They weren't. They were following through. They weren't just looking for eye candy. They were following through on what you were saying.
Yeah, it's interesting because anytime on Instagram I post anything about pornography or have the word sex in it, it's gets a lot of
but they were watching
hype behind the scenes.
But they were watching through to your statements.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. Isn't
they
it sad that we
following
have to sit
through.
here and say, "Oh, I sound like a prude,"
I
because I'm
know.
not anti-romance and I don't wear
And-
a
and-
burqa and easy spirits and like
you
shame
want,
people's love
when
lives.
you're married, you
but-
want to have a great sex life, and I think
course.
that's the point behind it. I do know, living as someone who is constantly having to please somebody
Right.
is a very hard thing, and I think this is what we're being set up for,
Right.
Either male or female, and
Feeling almost like a slave to somebody and just gratifying.
well, and in other words, I'm not going to be content unless you do blank,
Right.
or this happens, or you always look like the Victoria's Secrets model.
That's
That
such a big
doesn't happen.
burden on you too that you can't fulfill every
It is
single
a
waking hour.
unrealistic burden because
Yeah.
guess what? Hey, we get pregnant, we get fat. I mean,
We get saggy, we get
saggy.
stretch marks,
and guess
cellulite.
what? They do. The other side does too. You get older, and I think it's really frustrating that somewhere in this, obviously, it's about youth and whatnot, but somewhere, what are the sweetest moments you see in a movie and everybody goes, is when you see the older couple.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you see the older couples together, they've been there a very long time. There's a lot of water under their bridge. They've walked through it, but they are there together and they're in love. Or they're, at the very least, they're in it together and they're best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is maybe the crux of it all is there is no relationship in pornography. There is no chance of being, if you're buying or selling it, you're not best friends. You're not becoming a relationship.
Mm-hmm. It's
So
almost like
empty.
pouring out an
It is.
image and then discarding it. And
Yes.
it teaches you, whether it's a man or a woman consuming it, but giving the idea that I can consume this, get the quick, fleeting feeling, orgasmic experience, and then discard it.
Yeah.
And then you crave more, and
It's like quick divorce.
Right. And what does that set you up for?
And
for an actual
infidelity.
relation? Yeah, infidelity.
It's definitely
100% believe that if you consume pornography, I don't care if it's Sports Illustrated, a girl on Instagram, and her bikini thong that you heart or accidentally heart, or pages you're following, or magazines, like 100% it's infidelity. If it's coming between you and your spouse, even if it's a picture, it's still image or emotion picture. I think that 100% it's infidelity. And I think that it also sets up people who aren't in relationships or marriage for infidelity, because it teaches you, if boo thing's not giving you what you need, you can go to insert whatever free at your fingertips, one click away.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's frustrating on the dating scene too.
Well, no, well, that must be hard because it, everybody's been affected by pornography.
Oh yeah, I know.
Everybody's
so many
infected.
Yep. Yeah.
By pornography, not just affected, but infected. And that's good.
It's interesting. It's almost like being sick. Even like you can pass it on to somebody else. Not that you consume porn, but you can be affected by it, even if you don't consume it.
This is true, and it's like a soul sickness, and it's spread out.
Yeah.
And we don't see it as that. We see it as freedom.
Yeah. Freedom, liberation, do as I please. And I think it's not having to take radical responsibility for our own actions too, because we live in a very victimized world where we do as we please, we get as we please. It's very egotistical, and it's very much not about serving others. I think we live in a very self-gratifying culture where we think that our feelings and everything revolve purely around us, and we don't like the weight of responsibility for our own actions and for damage that we've caused, or even for who we're becoming. We blame the world, other things, and even rationalize it. And I think it can be the same instance in pornography, and especially for not taking responsibility for what we're posting, what we're consuming, and just the very flippant attitude I see.
Well, I think it's important, and I'm going to speak as somebody who was an alcoholic for 25 years. This is an addiction. I think we need to see it. I mean, I can also say there's plenty of things I can be addicted to, such as news scrolling at night.
Right.
I have to, put the phone down. The little rectangle rules our world, and it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. So putting it down. Let's come up with some tips. Like put it down, put it to rest, cut it off, and see if you can tolerate a day without it. And if you can't, then you are addicted.
Right.
Or, or if at the very least, weed it out and try to change what should be your delight. I think if anything, use this as a wake-up call to think about the stuff that you put before your eyes.
Right.
Because it does. And no matter what, remember that it's never just you. There's some other people who are going to either not benefit, joke, be harmed by it, or they're going to see it, or they're going to hear it. They're going to hear the angst in your voice or the anger that you've looked at this again, the behavioral aspects that just grow from having an addiction such as this. I mean, so speak to that a little bit. What are some other tips you would encourage just people to try to see?
I think to appreciate beauty, because, I mean, I can't say I haven't been addicted to pornography, so I don't know if I can speak to that directly, but I would say that because with pornography, there's nothing about it that's appreciating the beauty of somebody. It's not drawing beauty. It's, it all has to do with
taking it.
Yeah, taking sexual gratification and for the other person. Because there's nothing wrong with admiring and appreciating somebody or how somebody looks, but it's where your mind goes with that. Like, it's not abnormal for a man to notice a beautiful woman, a woman to notice a beautiful or handsome man, But it's, if your mind, I think it's where your mind takes it from there. Yeah. Are you curious about them as a person? Are you just admiring and appreciating their beauty? Or are you trying to gain something from it? Do you see them as their body part? Are you thinking what would they be like in bed? Right. What could I do to them? Right. How can I use them? How can I use them? Yeah, totally.
My jiu-jitsu sensei said a long time ago when I used to take that, he says, if you're married, you look once and that's it. Oof. Because, I mean, you can't go through life without looking at somebody. Like, you're walking by in the street, you just look at somebody, say hi. Yeah. But you look once and then that's it.
Right.
Because if you look twice,
Well, and I think with our era now, it's so easy because you can constantly go back and people have like a shrine of images so you can zoom in and out. And so it's this constant fixation. And that's why I think appreciating things of beauty, at least for myself, I know and this is going to sound like a really weird parallel because I've not been addicted to pornography, but I have dealt with some lows in my own mental health to where I feel like I've just been in this racetrack of intrusive thoughts with zero exit, especially last year. But what I realized is that when I was actively finding beauty, appreciating beauty, and it doesn't have to be an art gallery. It could be, but finding things of beauty, music that's life-giving, things that have a redeeming quality to them. Even looking up at the sky, not to sound cliche, but truly, like, people think you have to go far to admire or find beauty in something that's like, you could look at the sunrise, look at the clouds in the sky. Beauty can be found in almost anything in life. I think it's not just something that's a visual representation of that, but it can even be the sound of it, like music. And I think that for me, that was something that the more I focused on beauty and things that were life-giving or made me feel alive, things that had purpose, if that makes sense. Like, my soul felt so on fire for that, and I felt almost like that was occupying my time, that the intrusive thoughts and just some of the lowest of lows and darker, season I was going through, it helped to counter that. So it sounds like a really weird parallel, but I would encourage people, you know, to find beauty.
Yeah.
And pornography, I don't think anyone's going to look at that and say, oh, that's finding beauty.
But I think it's interesting because basically what you're saying is you're taking captive thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah, you're taking captive negative thoughts and saying, I'm going to replace them. You're renewing your mind and putting in new thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
I remember from an old Beth Moore study, she said something about re-wallpaper your mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to do is we have to, and it is a practice. It is a daily walk. And you just got to keep going forward because the further you go, the better life gets, and the more you see beauty, and the more you respect people, and treat people in a relationship instead. I mean, we know that ballroom, and we're going to wrap this up, but we know ballroom dancing has taught us how to really. And I'm in my 60th decade, my 66th decade, and you're in your second. But we didn't know what to do with half the population. We didn't know
men.
how.
Right.
And so it was interesting for us to go into the ballroom and realize you can treat a man with a respectful attitude, or he can treat you in a respectful attitude, and you can dance. You can literally dance, and it just be so very neutral, but so much joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you feel beautiful when you dance too? Do you find beauty in dancing?
I do find beauty in dancing. I don't know
You
if
could
I
say
know.
no to, but
I know. I just feel so much joy. I walk in there and I just feel so much joy. Even on a bad day. So
that's interesting you say that too, because I think finding joy in other things too is important, because I don't think when you really get down to it, I don't think anyone would say I find joy in pornography. I think it would say more
true.
so.
That is true.
Perhaps maybe it's a facade of joy. It's a fetish, but is that really joy?
No,
You know,
it's a quick fix.
Right.
That is, I think, maybe that's a very interesting thought. That is it. We don't find joy in that. I did not find joy in my addictions.
Right.
You feel the quick high. My addiction to alcohol, it was a quick high. It was a quick fix.
And then reality's still the same.
So I love that. So you do not find joy in these things. Anyways, so we're going to end the day asking you what the moral T is, and I think you just said it. I think you just said the moral T about it.
Our moral T.
Thought. The moral T is, in the end, it is about finding beauty and joy, and it is not found in pornography. Do you think that's it? But
Yes.
I was waiting for you to sum it up, my friend.
I was like, how do I sum this up? Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
We talked about.
Bye.
We're done.
Okay, bye.